Commander Alex Donovan stared at the official decree on his screen. His hands trembled slightly as he read it for the third time. The words remained the same, but he still couldn't believe them. By unanimous vote of the Galactic Council, all human military forces are hereby banned from participation in any interstellar conflict. Earth vessels are restricted to defensive operations within Sol system only. The Galactic Council chambers fell silent as the final vote was tallied. Humans sat on one side of the Grand Hall, representatives from 26 alien species on the other. The division wasn't just physical, it was philosophical. Alex watched as Admiral Laura Bennett, Earth's highest-ranking officer, stood to address the council. Her uniform was crisp, but her face showed the strain of the past 3 months. "We came when you called for help," she said, her voice steady despite her obvious anger. "We sacrificed our ships and our people to stop the Krell invasion. And this is how you thank us?" The massive Dral-Ken representative, Ambassador Ko-Lath, rose from his seat. His 4 arms were held in a formal posture of respect, but his voice carried a hint of fear. "The vote is not about gratitude, Admiral, it is about methods. In the Battle of Proxima Centauri, your forces deliberately vented reactor plasma to create a trap for pursuing Krell ships." "A trap that worked," Laura countered. "A trap that killed every living being in that system's outer belt mining colonies," Ko-Lath said. "Your captain didn't even check if evacuation was complete." Alex remembered that battle. Captain Frank Martinez had made a hard call, sacrifice 2,000 to save 2 billion. No human commander questioned the math. But the aliens did. Ambassador Zilthar of the Ashari Conclave stood next. The slender, blue-skinned diplomat's voice was gentle but firm. "Humans don't calculate odds," Zilthar said. "You just decide to win, no matter the cost. Your species treats war differently than the rest of us. You don't see it as a political tool or a last resort. You see it as a problem to be solved by any means necessary." Alex couldn't argue with that. Humanity had entered the galactic stage just 5 years ago when a Krell scouting fleet entered Sol system. Earth's United Defense Forces had destroyed them in days, using tactics the aliens considered barbaric, but effective. When the full Krell Dominion launched their campaign to conquer Council space a year later, humanity was invited to join the fight. The Council had expected Earth to contribute a few ships, some resources. Instead, humanity threw everything they had into the war. They converted passenger ships into carriers, mining tools into weapons, and civilian stations into fortresses. The Yao, Krell expected to face the methodical, rule-bound Council forces. Instead, they met humans who fought without concern for themselves, who sacrificed single ships to destroy larger targets, who used civilian infrastructure as bait to draw enemies into ambushes. In 18 months, the Krell were defeated, but the Council was horrified by humanity's methods. "The ban is effective immediately," announced Grand Counselor Val Sheen. "All human military vessels must return to Sol system within 30 days. Non-compliance will result in further sanctions." Alex looked around the Earth delegation. Some faces showed anger, others resignation. They had known this was coming. 3 days later, Alex sat in the officer's lounge of the Earth defense vessel Intrepid as it prepared to depart Council space. The ship had lost 40% of its crew in the final battle against the Krell flagship. Those who remained were mostly quiet as they watched news feeds from across the galaxy. "They're calling us savages," said Lieutenant Samantha Powell, sliding into the seat across from Alex. She pushed a tablet toward him displaying headlines from various alien news sources. "Humans, too dangerous to fight alongside. Council bans reckless Earth forces, the species that knows no limits in war." Alex pushed the tablet away. "We won their war for them." "That's the problem," said a voice from behind. Captain Olivia Wells joined them, her face showing the fatigue they all felt. "We showed them something they didn't want to see." "What's that, Captain?" Alex asked. "That their rules of war don't work against an enemy that doesn't play by the rules," she said, taking a seat. "The Krell would have wiped them out if they kept fighting with their neat battle formations and their careful proportional responses." Samantha nodded. So they're scared of us because we fight dirty? They're scared of us because we don't see it as fighting dirty, Olivia corrected. We see it as surviving. Alex thought about the Battle of Proxima Centauri again, about Captain Martinez making the call to sacrifice those miners, about how every human officer understood the decision, while every alien ally was horrified. Not by the deaths. The galaxy was no stranger to casualties, but by the casual way humans accepted them as necessary. What happens now? He asked. We go home, Olivia said simply. We develop our technology, strengthen our defenses, and wait. Wait for what? Samantha asked. For the day they need us again, Olivia replied. Because they will. The galaxy is too big and too dangerous for their careful approach to last forever. As Earth's fleet made its way home, delegations from across Council space watched them depart. Some with relief, others with concern. In private chambers, debates had already begun about whether the ban was wise. Ambassador Zilthar sat with Grand Counselor Valsheen in her private study. They saved us, Zilthar said quietly. At what cost? Valsheen replied. Their methods break every ethical code we have established for warfare. Perhaps our codes were made for a more civilized time, Zilthar suggested. The Krell showed no mercy, followed no rules, and neither did the humans, Valsheen said. That is precisely why they are dangerous. Zilthar looked out at the departing Earthships, visible as tiny points of light against the blackness of space. I fear we may have made a terrible mistake, he said. Not because we need their protection, but because we have just shown every potential enemy in the galaxy that humans are the species to fear. We have painted a target on their world. Valsheen nodded slowly. Perhaps, but the vote is done. The humans will return to their system, and the galaxy will have time to forget their methods. But as Commander Alex Donovan's ship jumped to faster than light speed heading back to Earth, he knew the galaxy wouldn't forget. And neither would humanity. We'll be back, he whispered to himself. And next time, they'll understand why we fight the way we do. The fleet returned to a hero's welcome on Earth. News of the ban spread quickly, but instead of outrage, Alex was surprised to find most humans simply shrugged it off. Let them handle their own wars then, was the common response. We'll take care of our own. But deep in secure facilities across Earth, military planners were already at work. If humanity couldn't fight alongside the galactic community, they would prepare to fight alone. And somewhere beyond known space, forces were gathering that would make the Krell look like a minor threat. Forces that wouldn't follow rules of engagement or honor surrenders. Forces that would test the Council's ban on human warfare to its breaking point. 50 years passed since the ban. Earth turned inward, developing its technology in isolation. The old warriors like Commander Alex Donovan had long since retired or passed away. A new generation of humans had grown up hearing stories about the galaxy but never experiencing it firsthand. Captain Olivia Donovan stood on the bridge of the Earth defense vessel Relentless, staring at the stars through the main viewport. At 45, she had her grandfather's strong jaw and determined eyes. She had joined Earth's defense forces to follow in his footsteps, though the missions had changed. No more grand battles across the stars, just patrols of the Sol system and occasional escort duties for the few merchant ships allowed to trade with nearby Council worlds. Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission, said Lieutenant Eric Barnes from the communications station. It's from the Galactic Council. Olivia turned sharply. The Council rarely contacted Earth directly these days. On screen, she ordered. The face that appeared was blue-skinned with large silver eyes. An Ashari. But not just any Ashari. This was Ambassador Treljar, son of the famous Zilthar, who had been present at the Council meeting that banned humans 50 years ago. Captain Donovan, Treljar said, his voice carrying the musical quality typical of his species. I am contacting you on a matter of extreme urgency. The Council requests Earth's immediate assistance. Olivia kept her face neutral. Ambassador, Earth has honored the ban for 50 years. What assistance could you possibly need that doesn't violate your own rules? Treljar's silver eyes darkened slightly, a sign of distress in Ashari. 3 months ago, a new species entered Council space from the Cygnus arm. We call them the Void Swarm. They do not communicate. They do not negotiate. They simply consume. Behind her, Olivia heard her crew shifting uneasily. They had all trained for war their entire careers, but none had seen actual combat. How many worlds? She asked quietly. 17 completely lost. 12 more under attack. The Council's peacekeeping forces have been systematically overwhelmed. The Void Swarm adapts to our tactics faster than we can develop new ones. Olivia walked closer to the screen. And now you want the savages to help you? Treljar showed. No offense at her bluntness. The Council has voted. We are not asking for your military. The ban remains. We are asking for observers, advisors, 12 humans with combat experience to observe our operations and provide perspective. Perspective, Olivia repeated flatly. You want our ideas, but not our ships or soldiers. Those are the terms the Council approved. Treljar replied. I pushed for more, but fear and pride are powerful forces, Captain. Olivia thought for a moment. I'll need to consult with Earth Command. Of course. But please hurry. The Thalasian homeworld fell yesterday. 8 billion souls. The evacuation ships didn't even make it out of orbit. The transmission ended and Olivia turned to her XO, Commander Paul Wright. What do you think? She asked. Paul's eyes were hard. I think they're desperate but still too proud to admit they need us. They want our brains but not our guns. That's how I see it too, Olivia said. Set course for Earth. I want to make this pitch to command in person. 3 weeks later, 12 humans prepared to board a Council diplomatic vessel in Earth orbit. Lieutenant Ryan Miller checked his luggage one last time. No weapons. The Council had been very clear about that. Just observation equipment, data pads, and civilian clothes. Ready for this? Asked Chief Science Officer Heather Caldwell as she joined him in the shuttle bay. Ryan shrugged. Ready to watch aliens fight a losing war while we take notes? Not really. Heather smiled grimly. That's not why we're going. No? Ryan raised an eyebrow. No, she said firmly. We're going because Captain Donovan believes the Council will eventually have no choice but to ask for real help. And when they do, we need to already be out there with intelligence on the enemy. The Council ship that collected them was sleek and beautiful, with none of the practical armor or weapon mounts that characterized Earth vessels. The Ashari captain, Krelvos, treated them with polite distance. You will be divided among our flagship vessels, he explained as they entered faster than light travel. 2 humans per battle group. You will observe, report your findings to Council commanders but not interfere in operations. Ryan and Heather were assigned to the Thalasian flagship Dawn Eternal, the largest vessel in the Council's fleet. Its commander, Admiral Kylezin, met them in the ship's grand receiving hall. Like all Thalasians, he was tall and thin with iridescent skin that shifted colors slightly with his moods. Currently, it had a grayish tinge that Ryan guessed meant stress or fatigue. Welcome aboard, Kylezin said without warmth. Your quarters are on Deck 7. You will have access to the observation deck during battles, but not the command center. That will make it difficult for us to provide useful insights, Heather pointed out. Those are my orders, Kylezin replied. The Council wants your observations, not your direct involvement in tactical decisions. 3 days later, Ryan stood on the observation deck as the Dawn Eternal and its battle group engaged a portion of the Void Swarm near the Procyon system. The swarm ships were bizarre, part organic, part mechanical, shaped like elongated insects with multiple segments. Ryan watched as the Council fleet executed a perfect pincer movement, surrounding a group of smaller swarm vessels. For a moment, it seemed like the tactic might work. Then, with startling speed, the swarm ships changed formation, linking together to form a larger structure that fired massive energy beams through the Council formation. 3 Council ships were destroyed. In seconds, the rest broke formation and retreated. They're fighting with perfect military doctrine, Ryan noted to Heather as they reviewed the battle footage later in their quarters. That's the problem, she replied. The swarm adapts to patterns. They need chaos. Ryan nodded. They need us. They submitted their observation report suggesting more unpredictable tactics, but Admiral Kyle Zinn dismissed their input. Council battle doctrine has been refined over thousands of years, he told them stiffly. Over the next 2 months, Ryan and Heather watched as battle after battle ended in retreat. The Void Swarm pushed deeper into Council space, consuming resources and leaving lifeless husks of planets behind. After the fall of Arcturus, a major Council stronghold, Admiral Kyle Zinn finally came to their quarters personally. His skin had turned almost completely gray. "Tell me what you would do," he demanded. Ryan's response was simple. Something they won't expect. Heather had been analyzing the swarm's movement patterns for weeks. They adapt to predictability, she explained. But they might have a weakness. They seem to have trouble processing multiple simultaneous threats that don't follow logical patterns. Kyle Zinn looked skeptical. "You're suggesting we abandon battle formation? Fight without coordination?" "I'm suggesting controlled chaos," Heather said. "Let each ship captain make independent decisions within an overall strategic framework." That's not how we fight," Kyle Zinn said, but his tone had lost some of its certainty. As the fleet regrouped and prepared for yet another defensive stand, news came that the Thalasian colony of New Hope was next in the swarm's path. A planet with 80 million civilians and evacuation capabilities for barely a tenth of that number. That night, Ryan and Heather made their decision. The Council wasn't ready to listen, but Earth needed to know what they were facing. While the ship's crew slept, they slipped away to the communications center and sent a coded message back to Earth with everything they had learned about the swarm. Then they returned to their quarters to wait. The battle for New Hope was about to begin, and with it, a new chapter in humanity's relationship with the galaxy. The Thalasian flagship Dawn Eternal moved into position above New Hope Colony. From the observation deck, Ryan and Heather watched as the rest of the Council fleet formed a defensive barrier around the planet. Their perfect formation looked impressive, but predictable. Exactly what had failed against the Void Swarm in every previous battle. "They're going to lose again," Ryan said quietly. 80 million people down there, and they're using the same tactics that failed at Arcturus. Heather nodded. Her eyes focused on the datapad in her hands. For weeks she had been gathering information on the swarm's behavior patterns, looking for any weakness. Now she showed Ryan what she'd found. "Look at this. When the swarm ships connect to form larger structures, there's a 3-second energy surge here and here." She pointed to specific points on the diagram. "They're vulnerable during that moment." "Have you shown this to Admiral Kyle Zinn?" Ryan asked. "Twice. He says it's too risky to attack during the transformation. Council doctrine says to retreat when the swarm begins to combine ships." Ryan frowned. "That's exactly why they keep losing. They do what the swarm expects." A soft chime from their communication device interrupted them. It was a secure message from Earth. Captain Olivia Donovan's face appeared on the small screen. "Lieutenant Miller, Officer Caldwell, we received your data packet. Earth Command has made a decision based on your intelligence." Her expression was grim but determined. "The Earth Defense Fleet is mobilizing. 50 ships will arrive at New Hope in approximately 12 hours. You need to prepare the Council fleet." Ryan and Heather exchanged shocked looks. "Captain," Ryan replied, "the Council hasn't approved military intervention. If Earth sends ships, it violates the ban." "Earth Command is aware," Olivia said simply. "The decision has been made. 80 million lives are at stake. Prepare the Council commanders as best you can." The transmission ended. Ryan ran a hand through his hair. "Well, this changes everything." "We need to tell Admiral Kyle Zinn," Heather said. "He needs to know Earth ships are coming." When they requested an urgent meeting with the Admiral, they were surprised to be granted immediate access to the command center, something previously forbidden to them. The atmosphere on the bridge was tense. Tactical displays showed the Void Swarm approaching, larger than any force they had yet encountered. Admiral Kyle Zinn's skin had paled to an almost white color. "You wanted to see me, humans?" Ryan stepped forward. "Admiral, we've received word from Earth. Our defense fleet is on the way to assist in the defense of New Hope. The command center fell silent. Kyle Zinn's eyes widened. That violates the council? Ban? Yes, it does, Heather said calmly. 50 ships will be here in approximately 12 hours. They're coming to help whether the council approves or not. One of the Thalasian officers spoke up. Admiral, the evacuation ships can only take 7 million people. We need at least 3 days to get them off planet. Kyle Zinn looked at the tactical display again, then back at the humans. What are you suggesting we do? Ryan took a deep breath. Fight differently, right now, before Earth arrives. Give the evacuation ships time. How? Kyle Zinn asked, his voice softer than they had ever heard it. Heather activated her datapad and projected her findings onto the main display. The swarm has a weakness during transformation, a 3-second window where they're vulnerable. But, to exploit it, ships would need to attack independently without central coordination. That goes against all council battle doctrine, another officer protested. Yes, Ryan said. That's exactly the point. Do what they don't expect you to do. Admiral Kyle Zinn was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to his communications officer. Send a message to all ships. New battle plan. Each captain has independent attack authority. Target the connection points when swarm ships begin to combine. No retreat unless individually necessary. The officer hesitated. Sir, that's against council protocols. I am aware, Kyle Zinn said, firmly. Do it anyway. 4 hours later, the battle began. From the command center where they were now permitted to stay, Ryan and Heather watched as the council fleet broke from their traditional formations. Instead of the coordinated movements they had always used, each ship now fought independently, targeting the swarm's connection points during transformation. For the first time, the swarm seemed confused. Their usual adaptive strategy faltered. Against the unpredictable attacks, several smaller swarm ships were destroyed before they could combine. It's working, Heather whispered, but the advantage was temporary. The swarm was massive, and despite the new tactics, they began to push through the council's defensive line. Ships were lost on both sides, but the swarm had more to spare. Admiral Kyle Zinn watched grimly as his fleet fought bravely but continued to lose ground. How much longer until your ships arrive? He asked Ryan. 8 hours, Ryan replied. Can you hold that long? No, Kyle Zinn said honestly, but we will try. Just then a new alert sounded. One of the officers looked up in surprise. Admiral, we're detecting hyperspace signatures, many ships emerging, but it's not the swarm. Earth vessels? Kyle Zinn asked. No, sir. The signatures are... they're council ships, from all member species. On the main screen, hyperspace portals opened all around the battlefield. Dozens, then hundreds of ships appeared, vessels from every council species. They weren't the official council fleet. These were civilian ships, research vessels, even private yachts, all armed with hastily attached weapons. A transmission came through on all channels. The face that appeared was that of Councillor Vareth, an elderly Dralkan who had voted against human involvement 50 years ago. Admiral Kyle Zinn, this is Councillor Vareth. We received your battle data. The council remains in session, arguing about what to do. But many of us couldn't wait for an official decision. We've brought every ship we could find. Kyle Zinn looked stunned. Counselor, these aren't military vessels. No, Vareth agreed, but we watched the humans during the Krell War. We learned something from them after all. Sometimes you must break the rules to save lives. The battle shifted again. The civilian ships fought without military precision, but with a chaotic energy that confused the swarm even further. They targeted the connection points as Heather had suggested, sacrificing smaller ships to protect larger evacuation vessels. With this unexpected reinforcement, the council forces managed to hold back the swarm. The evacuation of New Hope began in earnest, ships full of civilians breaking through the battle line to safety. Ryan and Heather worked tirelessly on the command center, coordinating between the council ships and providing tactical suggestions based on their observations of the swarm's reactions. 7 hours into the battle, With the Council forces still holding but beginning to falter, Admiral Kyle Zinn received a new alert. Hyperspace signatures detected. 50 ships emerging. The tactical officer's voice was tense. It's the Earth fleet. The massive Earth dreadnought Defiance led the formation, flanked by warships that Council space hadn't seen in 50 years. They had clearly been improved upon, larger and more heavily armed than during the Krell War. A transmission came through from the Defiance. Captain Jack Reynolds appeared on screen, his expression determined. "This is Earth Fleet Command. Stand by for assistance." His eyes met Kyle Zinn's through the transmission. "We'll handle this, just stay out of our way." The human fleet moved into positions that violated every tactical doctrine in the Council's manuals, and as they engaged the swarm, the galaxy was reminded why humans had been banned from galactic wars in the first place. The Earth fleet moved with a speed and purpose that stunned even the Council's most experienced commanders. Unlike the perfect formations of Council ships, the human vessels spread out in what seemed like random patterns, constantly changing position. Admiral Kyle Zinn watched from the command center of the Dawn Eternal as the Earthships engaged the Void Swarm. He turned to Ryan and Heather, who stood nearby studying the tactical displays. "What are they doing?" he asked. "There's no pattern to their movements." "That's the point," Ryan explained. "They're being unpredictable. The swarm can't adapt to what it can't predict." On the main screen, they watched as the human dreadnought Defiance deliberately took damage to its outer hull, drawing fire from 3 swarm ships. As the swarm concentrated their attack on the Defiance, 5 smaller Earth vessels swooped in, from different angles targeting the exposed connection points Heather had identified. "They're using themselves as bait," Kyle Zinn said, his skin changing to a deep blue color of amazement. Heather nodded. "Captain Reynolds is drawing their attention while the other ships attack from positions the swarm doesn't expect. The tactic worked." The 5 Earth vessels destroyed the 3 swarm ships before they could combine into a larger structure. But the Defiance had taken significant damage in the process. Why would they sacrifice their flagship like that? One of the Thalasian officers asked. "They're not sacrificing it," Ryan said. "They're using it. Earth ships are built to take damage and keep fighting. Their hulls are reinforced specifically for this kind of tactic." Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Earth vessels positioned themselves in ways that seemed tactically unsound, drawing swarm attacks before revealing it was all part of a larger strategy. Some ships appeared to retreat, only to circle back and strike from unexpected angles. Others worked in small groups that formed and disbanded so quickly the swarm couldn't adapt. Captain Jack Reynolds' voice came through on a general channel. "All Council vessels, this is Earth Command. We're going to open a corridor for the civilian evacuation ships. Form up behind our lead vessels and follow our path." Admiral Kyle Zinn hesitated only briefly before responding. "Understood, Captain Reynolds. Council fleet will follow your lead." The combined forces began to turn the tide of battle. The evacuation ships protected by the corridor created by Earth and Council vessels managed to escape with thousands of civilians aboard. But the swarm was still overwhelming in its numbers, and for every ship they destroyed, more seemed to appear. From their position on the Dawn Eternal, Ryan and Heather continued to analyze the swarm's behavior, sending their observations to both Council commanders and the Earth fleet. As they worked, Heather noticed something in the data. "Look at this," she said to Ryan, pointing to her screen. "The swarm seems to be drawing energy from somewhere. Their power readings are increasing, even though we're destroying their ships." Ryan studied the readings. They must have a central power source, something feeding energy to all the ships. They brought their discovery to Admiral Kyle Zinn, who immediately contacted Captain Reynolds on the Defiance. "Captain, our human observers have detected an energy source feeding the swarm. If we can locate and destroy it, we might be able to weaken the entire force at once." Reynolds's face on the screen was smudged with soot, and sparks flew in the background as his damaged ship continued to fight. "Send me the data," he said. "We'll find it." Working together, Earth and Council ships began scanning for the energy source. It was Heather who finally pinpointed its location, a massive swarm vessel hiding behind the moon of New Hope. "That's their control ship," she announced. "It's directing the smaller vessels and providing them with power." Captain Reynolds's voice came through again. We've identified the target, but it's heavily protected. We'll need a combined attack to break through. Admiral Kyle Zinn looked at the tactical display. The path to the control ship was heavily guarded by swarm vessels. It would be a suicide mission, he said quietly. Not necessarily, Ryan countered. We just need a diversion. Something big enough to draw most of the swarm away from the control ship. The Admiral's skin changed to a thoughtful green color. What do you suggest? Ryan pointed to New Hope's second moon, a small, uninhabited rock rich in minerals. The swarm consumes resources, right? What if we give them something they can't resist? Heather caught on immediately. We could rig the moon with explosives, make it look like we're trying to deny them resources by destroying it. The swarm would move to stop us, Ryan continued, drawing ships away from the control vessel. Admiral Kyle Zinn considered the plan. It was reckless, dangerous, and exactly the kind of thinking that had gotten humans banned from galactic wars. It was also their best chance to save millions of lives. How would we detonate an entire moon? He asked. We wouldn't actually destroy it, Heather explained. Just make the swarm think we're about to. A few strategic explosions on the surface would be enough. The plan was quickly communicated to Captain Reynolds, who approved immediately. Classic human distraction technique, he said with a grim smile. We'll handle the explosives. Admiral, have your fleet ready to strike the control ship the moment the swarm takes the bait. 6 Earth vessels broke away from the main battle, carrying mining explosives that had been hastily repurposed as weapons. They landed on the small moon and began setting charges while the rest of the Earth and Council fleets continued to fight, protecting the remaining evacuation ships. From the dawn eternal, Ryan and Heather watched as the trap was set. This is exactly why the Council banned us, Ryan said quietly. We turn anything into a weapon, even a moon. Heather nodded. And it's exactly why they need us now. The explosives were detonated in sequence, creating massive plumes of dust and rock that shot into space. Sensors across all ships detected the explosions, and as predicted, a large portion of the swarm immediately changed course toward the moon. They took the bait, Admiral Kilzin announced. All ships prepare to attack the control vessel. The combined Earth and Council fleets surged toward the now less protected control ship. The Defiance, despite its damage, led the charge. Earth vessels took the brunt of the defensive fire, allowing Council ships to target weak points with precision. As they closed in on the massive control ship, Captain Reynolds' voice came through one last time. We're going to break through their outer defenses. Be ready to hit the core the moment we create an opening. The Defiance and 3 other Earth vessels accelerated to full speed, aiming directly at the control ship's main defense array. It was a maneuver that no Council commander would ever have approved, a deliberate collision course. At the last possible moment, the Earth ships fired all weapons at a single point, creating a breach in the control ship's defenses. 2 of the Earth vessels couldn't pull away in time and crashed into the swarm ship, tearing open a massive hole in its structure. Now, shouted Admiral Kyle Zinn, all ships, target the breach. Every remaining vessel in the combined fleet fired into the opening, their weapons reaching the control ship's vulnerable core. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a massive energy surge erupted from within the swarm vessel. It began to break apart, massive sections tearing away as internal explosions ripped through its structure. Across the battlefield, the effect was immediate. Smaller swarm ships began to drift aimlessly, their coordination lost. Some simply shut down, while others fired randomly, no longer following any discernible pattern. We did it, Heather breathed, watching the tactical display as the swarm fell into chaos. The battle wasn't over. There were still hundreds of swarm ships to deal with, but without their control ship, they were no longer an organized force. One by one, the remaining swarm vessels were destroyed or disabled. As the fighting died down, Admiral Kyle Zinn turned to Ryan and Heather. His skin had turned a deep purple color they had never seen before. Is this what it was like? He asked, quietly. During the Krell War? Ryan nodded. This is why we fight the way we do. Sometimes the only way to win is to do the unexpected, even if it means breaking the rules. The Admiral looked back at the view screen, where the remnants of both fleets drifted among the debris of the battle. 2 Earth vessels had been completely destroyed in the final attack on the control ship. Dozens more were damaged, including the Defiance. "The Council was wrong to ban you," Kyle Zinn said finally. "But I'm beginning to understand why they did." 2 weeks after the Battle of New Hope, Captain Jack Reynolds stood before the Galactic Council. The Grand Chamber was filled to capacity with representatives from every Council species. Some faces showed gratitude, others wariness, and a few open hostility. The Earth fleet had saved New Hope and destroyed the Void Swarm control ship, but at a cost. 7 human vessels had been lost completely. 23 more, including the Dreadnought Defiance, needed major repairs. 39 human crew members had died, with over 100 injured. Council forces had suffered losses too, but the human sacrifices had drawn the most attention across the galaxy. News had spread quickly about Earthships deliberately taking damage to protect evacuation vessels, about the dangerous moon diversion plan, and about the final attack, where 2 Earthships crashed into the swarm control vessel to create a breach. Grand, Counselor Valsheen, the same Ashari who had announced the ban 50 years earlier, now much older but still commanding respect, addressed Reynolds. "Captain Reynolds, Earth forces entered Council space with armed vessels, directly violating the ban established 50 years ago. The penalties for such violation are severe." Reynolds stood tall, his uniform still bearing scorch marks from the battle. Behind him sat Ryan, Heather, and several other human observers who had been instrumental in the victory. "We were aware of the consequences when we made our decision, Counselor," Reynolds replied. 80 million lives were at stake. We chose to act rather than watch them die. And yet, Valsheen continued, those actions saved not only the citizens of New Hope, but possibly many more worlds that would have fallen to the swarm. The Council finds itself in a difficult position. From his seat near the front of the chamber, Counselor Vareth stood. The elderly Dralkan who had led the civilian fleet at New Hope moved to the center of the floor. "If I may address the Council," he said, his forearms held in a formal gesture. "I was present 50 years ago when we voted to ban humans from our conflicts. I voted in favor of that ban. I believed their methods too extreme, too willing to accept sacrifice." He turned to face Reynolds directly. "I was wrong." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Vareth continued, "At New Hope, I saw what humans truly are. They do not fight as we do because they see war differently. We see it as a political extension, a regrettable necessity conducted with rules and protocols. They see it as survival, pure and simple." He gestured to the human delegation. When a human ship took damage to protect civilian vessels, it wasn't following a tactical doctrine. It was following a moral one. The strong protect the weak, whatever the cost. Ryan leaned toward Heather. "Is he defending us?" he whispered. "I think he's trying to explain us," she replied quietly. Vareth wasn't finished. "The ban was justified, but not for the reasons we thought. We banned humans because they showed us something uncomfortable, that our civilized rules of warfare are a luxury. Against an enemy like the Krell or the Void Swarm, those rules become a liability." He faced the Council again. "I propose we maintain the ban, but with an amendment. Humans are prohibited from galactic warfare except in cases of existential threat to civilian populations." The chamber erupted in debate. Some Council members argued that any exception would eventually be abused. Others pointed out that without the humans, New Hope would have been lost completely. Throughout the arguments, Captain Reynolds and his team sat quietly. They had done what they believed right, regardless of political consequences. Whatever the Council decided, Earth would continue to defend itself and others if needed. After hours of debate, a vote was called. The amendment passed by a narrow margin. Humans would remain banned from routine conflicts but could be called upon in times of dire need. As the Council session ended, Admiral Kyle Zinn approached the human delegation. His skin had a warm golden hue, a sign of respect among Thalasians. "Captain Reynolds," he said, extending a hand in the human greeting style he had learned. "My people owe you a debt we can never repay. Half of New Hope's population was safely evacuated because of your actions. Reynolds shook the offered hand. We did what anyone would do. No, Kyle Zinn replied firmly. That's what we've finally understood. Not everyone would do what you did. Most species wouldn't. My own included. Later, as the humans prepared to return to their ships, a young Thalasian officer approached Ryan and Heather. I have a question, he said hesitantly. During the battle, the Defiance took severe damage to protect our evacuation ships. 2 of your vessels were destroyed, creating the breach in the control ship. Why were humans willing to die for species? They barely knew? Ryan looked at Heather, then back at the young officer. Because that's what humans do, he replied simply. We're at our best when things are at their worst. The officer considered this. Is that why you were banned? Because you fight too hard? No, Heather said with a gentle smile. We were banned because the galaxy couldn't bear the cost we were willing to pay for victory. But now they understand. Sometimes that cost is necessary. As the Earth fleet prepared to depart Council space, messages poured in from across the galaxy. Many were from New Hope survivors thanking the humans for their sacrifice. Others came from military commanders who had witnessed the battle, expressing new respect for Earth tactics. On the bridge of the repaired Defiance, Captain Reynolds read through the messages with mixed emotions. The victory had been costly. Good. People had been lost, but millions had been saved, and perhaps more importantly, a new understanding had been forged. Set course for Earth, he ordered. Let's go home. What about the ban, sir? His first officer asked. We're still technically restricted from most council space. Reynolds smiled slightly. I have a feeling we'll be called back sooner than anyone expects. The galaxy's a dangerous place. Sometimes you need people willing to break the rules to save it. As the Earth fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed, news of their actions continued to spread. On countless worlds, people looked to the stars with new knowledge. Humans had been banned from galactic wars not because they were too dangerous to their enemies, but because they fought with a commitment few other species could understand or match. The ban remained in place, but its meaning had changed. What once had been seen as a punishment was now recognized as a somber acknowledgement. Humans were the galaxy's last resort, the ones you called when all other options had failed. In the years that followed, Earth continued to develop its technology and train its defense forces. They maintained the peace in their own system and honored the Council's ban, but they also kept their ships ready, their crews prepared, because sooner or later, the galaxy would need them again. And when that day came, humanity would answer the call just as they always had, not with perfect formations or careful strategies, but with an unbreakable will to protect life, whatever the cost. The galaxy now understood why humans were banned from galactic wars, and strangely enough, humanity took it as a compliment.